Patch 7.5 is here, and with it has come a lot of new info, not only about the next threat we face, nor even the overarching threat of the solstice, but also, I believe, this patch has given us some information about the true essence of 14's next big saga. Let's talk about it. Hello Void, it's Eldon, and I just finished the patch 7.5 MSQ. It was really good, probably some of the best we've had in a while, and it makes me very excited for Evercold. Now, I will admit, after this patch, it seems like my Void expansion obsession is probably toast. It seems like we're pushing it off, another expansion cycle. Wahoo! But even with my hopes dashed upon the rocks, we still received a bunch of really cool info and hints about what this new saga is actually going to be about. Let's start off with perhaps the most relevant and clear thing, the Winterers and the Solstice. The Solstice is the new calamity we are trying to stop. Well, not necessarily new. It is also, in fact, an old threat, that of rejoining. Welcome down to the lore corner today. We are going to explain the Solstice from a lore perspective. A long time ago, Vana split Aetheris into many different shards, dividing its ether amongst all of them. The Ascians didn't like this, so they started trying to rejoin the different worlds. These rejoinings work by creating a scenario where the ether of one of the shards is able to pierce the barrier between worlds and flood back into the source. When Highland was still up and running, these barriers were thick, so in order for the Ascians to do a rejoining, they'd have to do a two-step process. One, they'd have to aspect most, if not all, of the ether in one of the shards. We can see this in the first with them making a bunch of light-aspected ether and releasing the flood of light. They've also apparently done this in a bunch of other shards, including possibly the ninth, which we see covered in lightning, and the upcoming fourth covered in cold. The Ascians would then cause a simultaneous calamity on the source. This powerful event would pull aspected ether from all over, creating a strong enough force that ether from the shard would slip through the barrier between worlds and flood into the source, rejoining that shard. What's been described as of 7.5 is that the separator between shards, this barrier, is thinning, growing weaker without the presence of Hydaelyn. This means that we could get a natural rejoining. Instead of the ether of the shard being pulled into the source, the barrier itself would collapse, causing the entirety of the shard to crash into the source. Think of this as instead of being sprayed with a hose, you instead have a massive wave dumped on you all at once. This is what the solstice would be like. And it wouldn't just be one shard, it would be all of those remaining. Sounds pretty bad. This calamity was apparently foreseen by Halmaret, who created their own organization separate from the Ascians, known as the Winterers. From what we hear, these guys are essentially a collection of different supervillains from all across the different shards, each of whom would be willing to see worlds burn to achieve their own ambitions. Honestly, I don't hate this setup. When we got the hints that we would be doing more rejoining stuff in 7.4, I was initially very skeptical. Hadn't we already done this before? Isn't this just retreading old ground? But with it set up this way, what we're doing now, I think it's got a chance to be quite interesting. The first point in favor of this is that we never actually really did any rejoining stuff. There was a bit of it in the patch quest for Stormblood, and we took down Emmett, but he wasn't really doing a rejoining actively at the time. He was sort of just messing around, having an existential crisis on the first. I mean, we did prevent a rejoining in the process, but that was never really the goal there. It was never really an active threat. We never got to the brink of rejoining. We were more focused on helping out the people of the first. Aside from that, we never really touched on the events of rejoining. And it's a complicated enough event that I can see a lot of ground to make each one interesting, or, well, at least the threat of each one interesting. The other thing that intrigues me are the Winterers. They don't seem to be a rehash of the Ascians. Our old friends, the Ascians, were always sort of a monolith, more in their obscurity than their actual motivations. Especially as time passed, we got a little bit more detail on each of them that stepped into the story, but for so much of 14's history, the Ascians were kind of just this generic, evil, vague shadow guys. They also all had the same origin and the same basic motivation. For what we hear at the end of 7.5, each of these Winterers seems to be their own individual. They don't share a goal necessarily, and they don't have to work together. This provides a lot more opportunity to make them unique and give us a lot more stuff to work with. It also finally clarifies something I've been wondering about for a long time now. Endwalker marked the end of the Light and Darkness saga. While I am almost certain that it was not originally envisioned as such, that period of 14's history does share some common threads enough that I would consider it to be sort of a uniform whole in hindsight. There is a core bond holding together so much of 14's story in that time. Across each expansion, we fight for change. The Scions are a force for progress, of moving forward, and we fight against enemies stuck still in the past. Nidhogg could not release themselves from their ancient grudge. Xenos was listless and purposeless. Emmet literally fought to return the world to an ancient state. Each of these enemies were stuck in the past, held stable, or even regressive. And in the end, at the end of this saga, we fought against the ultimate force for stagnancy, the manifestation of despair in the Endsinger. This new batch of antagonists are hopefully different. Calyx describes each of them as being ambitious, as having some goal for which they would burn worlds. If the themes of our antagonists in these upcoming expansions are unified in this way, in this direction, with each of them looking forward towards their own vision of the future, I see 14's story potentially evolving greatly. We will no longer explore diametric opposition. Instead, we will be pushing in different ways from our antagonists, each of us trying to achieve some dream and purpose. I also think it's interesting that, even this early, they pose the Warrior of Light in relation to Xenos, because that puts an entirely new spin on this proposed theme. If what Halmarit says is true, if the Warrior of Light is truly some sort of wanderer, a fight-hungry beast in search of another world to save, then that would put us in the position of our old enemy. If our new foes are fighting for something and we are just aimlessly do-gooding, then we would be, thematically speaking, no better than the people we once fought. That's interesting framing, and I hope they develop it further. Not saying this is actually true, but I think it's an interesting angle to develop the story, and I like that it's coming out so early. As far as I can see, this conflux of new themes will culminate in us trying to resolve the solstice. Clearly, we are not going to do a rejoining. That's pretty fucked up. I mean, they're essentially asking us to sacrifice the majority of worlds to save our own skin. Not very Scion-coded, if you ask me. But we will eventually have to deal with it. My money is on breaking the shard's dependency on the source and setting each of them as their own individual world, but we'll just leave that here for when it resolves in like a decade. Regardless, this ultimate goal will put us at odds with the Winterers. It will be a battle between two different ways to solve a problem that needs solving, and possibly this would present an opportunity for some of them to even change sides, if they are not in fact diametrically opposed to us. If we are both pointing forward, but in slightly different directions, then they could change their mind. Because, we're gonna be sort of the de facto side of good. This new saga, the Godless Realms saga, is looking to be a very fertile piece of soil with which to sow the seeds of story, and I am excited to see if they can cultivate it. 14 is best when it has a direction, and also when it's a little bit hungry. And I think they're definitely hungry, and now I can finally see the direction they're pushing in. And it's full of new and interesting possibilities. 7.5 has only just introduced us to these ideas. And well, also the entirety of the Dawntrail past quests, those have been kind of a prologue to all this. Not Dawntrail 7.0, but like the patch quests are basically this type of story in microcosm, giving us a baseline, but well, I digress. We are now started on the beginning of a new road. I can see some parts along the horizon where this path might lead, and there are so many interesting possibilities. I think it'll be cool. I have the smallest amount of faith that 14 might just be able to pull off this new saga and make a good story again that finally feels deep. Though I suppose only time will tell. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed listening to my inane ramblings, please subscribe. I really like seeing that number go up, and, well, that's something only you can do. If you like this idea, if you think I'm dead wrong, or if you have any interesting things to say about the future of 14 and its story, please let me know in the comments. I really like reading them, and hopefully you can give me some interesting theories to ponder. However, regardless, if you do or if you don't, it's a long road out there, Void, so take it easy and look to the future. There's plenty of places we might go. Ta-ta!